things that we're going to do is, thanks Lisa. Here. One of the things the Business Management Club is trying to do is get out and get some experience doing the workshops and help presenting parts of workshops. Jenny was part of that last couple of years. So getting students some confidence and being able to get in front of people, some experience, some visibility and credibility for them when they go out in the work world. They already have some relationships established and credibility as a business management club student. Most of my students are not fresh out of high school. Most of them are 25 to 55 years old, so they've got real life experience, real work life experience. And much of this stuff I'm going to share with you today. I teach in class, and what I do is I use my classroom as a lab. I say, does this make any sense to you guys? If it doesn't make any sense, challenge me. We want stuff that's going to work on the street. So a couple thousand students later, pretty well validated around this kind of information. So my background real quick is spent 25 years in restaurant kitchens, got burnt out, went back to school, got a degree in English, and instead of a minor I got a certificate in professional training and development, which I was really on fire about, and went on to get a master's degree in organization development where I focused on group process. And I realized that two burning questions really drove my education. What does it take to get a group of people to work together in a positive, productive, cohesive manner? And question number two, why does that not happen most of the time? So what I'm going to do is share with you some of those answers today, and how do you remedy that potential for unnecessary conflict. I'm also a certified trainer, certified mediator. I just did my 90th mediation last week, and trained mediators for 12 hours last week, which was really fun. Blessed are the peacemakers. And a certified group facilitator. But most importantly, I'm licensed to tell bad jokes. So did you guys hear about the circus catching on fire last week? Yeah, it was intense.
So sorry.
All right.
Grab a plate.
So, actually what I like to do is, instead of just giving you my canned content, is figure out what do you guys want out of today. We're talking about meeting management. What is it you guys want to get out of today? What's an expectation for today? None? Well, I can beat that. That's easy, yeah? Now, if you pop up with any questions at any time. Oh, I also have this sign-up sheet, our Business Management Club. We're going to do workshops, and if you just put an X by what you might be interested in, we'll take that information and plug it into our calendar. On December 18th at Burlington Chamber, we're going to do a presentation on facilitation skills and pass around a sheet to see if anybody's interested in signing up for a 3-hour workshop on facilitation skills. So today is going to just be kind of a quick overview of what does it take to get a group of people to work together. So, since you don't have any expectations, I'll meet those. So first of all, one of the things I've found is that there's a myth, and 2/3 of it's true. We're a bunch of good people, true. We're here for a good or noble cause, true. Everything should work out, right? Whoops. Yeah. And what the problem is with that. And the problem is that because we're a bunch of good people here for a good or noble cause, we hope we're going to get along, we wish we'd get along, we think we're going to get along, we believe we're going to get along, but we didn't agree to. So one of the things I've come up with is, as a group, you want to get a set of agreements. And what I did was I ended up coming up with a foundation, kind of a three-legged stool. We want to have an agreement about interpersonal performance standards. How are we going to perform with each other on an interpersonal basis? What kind of tone of voice am I going to use? What kind of questions am I going to use? What kind of demeanor am I going to show up when I interact with you? So I'm calling it performance because it is a set of behaviors, yeah? It's like running or jumping, or you're using your face and your hands and your body and all that kind of stuff to communicate. So we want to get an agreement about this, okay? We want to get an agreement about how we're going to manage conflict, Because if you don't manage conflict, conflict will manage you. Like trolls making babies under the bridge. Someday they're all going to come out. Yeah. So we want to have an agreement on it. And conflict is inevitable. Then we want to have a way to run our meetings, which is what today's about. So I'm going to kind of gloss over the first bulk of this handout real quickly and get into the meeting stuff. But I did my master's thesis, I did on the hypothesis that if I have a meeting management model and I intervene in the group, that they're going to improve their ability to communicate, follow through, and manage conflict and all those other kinds of things in a group. And I came out with, and I did a community action group in Moses Lake. We're trying to drag Moses Lake into the 21st century. Okay. They've been working for 3 years, and they were holding 3-hour meetings in order to accomplish 90 minutes worth of meetings. And God bless those people, you know, for hanging in there and persisting. I would have shot myself before that, right? But anyway, so I did the intervention. I showed them the meeting management model, and we went over it, and I facilitated their first meeting, and they were done at 90 minutes exactly. And this was their response. What happened? They couldn't believe they got done in 90 minutes. But it's really, the nutshell of it is getting off-task behaviors out of the way. Don't let people get engaged in it, and we'll go over that in a minute. So, I've created you'll see on this foundation, calling this a foundation for collaboration. We want to have this first. We don't want to go in and put up walls and second story without a foundation. We want to have a solid foundation. So on top of this stuff comes communication skills training. Comes coaching as the new supervisory language. How do we support this? When people violate one of these agreements, can we coach them back into performance? Yeah, okay. And on the front sheet, you'll see the forming, storming, norming stuff. How many of you guys have heard of that? No?
What? Storming, norming?
Forming, storming, norming, performing. It's kind of a group process cycle. And the norms are socially acceptable behaviors in our group. So, Boy Scouts have norms. Enron had norms. Remember the guys that lost billions of dollars in pension funds? They had norms, and they were walk all over everybody to get as much wealth as you can. That was a norm. Inner city gangs have norms. People have norms. So what I'm doing here is establish, you go through the forming, get together, we're a bunch of good people. You go through the storming because you're going to get differences and they're going to clash. Okay? And then hopefully we get to the other side where we get some norms, so that we can get some performing. So forming, storming, norming, performing. What this is meant to do is to deliberately establish what your norms are ahead of time, so we know where we're going. Okay. So, the other thing I did was created a sheet of communication tips. All this stuff is for your reading pleasure, stuff to read when you're going to sleep at night. But I kept teaching how difficult communication is, and I realized, geez, you can't stop there. You got to give folks some kind of way to move forward. So here, I took from 5 different books, and one of the richest sources I got for this is My Own Mistakes, which is where you learn the most. Kind of stuff is on here. So these comes from Crucial Conversation, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Becoming a Conflict Competent Leader, Center for Creative Leadership, Active Listening, a bunch of stuff. So ways to communicate, because conflict, 95% of the time, conflict comes from poor communication, miscommunication, non-communication, and that's the culprit. So the idea was to create a sheet to kind of ensure clarity. Here's a really cool one I came across. I've given this to a couple thousand students. This is the emotional improvement model for emotional intelligence. How to really, this is backed by brain science, how to really set things aside so your neural networks and synapses will prune away of responses you don't like, don't want to have, or ineffective, etc. Not any habitual emotional responses are good or bad. Are they working for you? Is the idea. This is a way to set aside the old stuff, let it prune away. If you don't use it, you lose it. Wire in some new stuff called new thinking, or new neural networks, whatever fires together, wires together. So my classic one is impatience and irritation on the road. Guy going 35 and a 50 from Burlington to Woolley. Anybody familiar? So you know, by the time I'm getting to work, it's like steam's coming out of my ears. This isn't working anymore. So I decided to set that aside, patience and irritation, and wire in patience and generosity. Why not? So anyway, thing worked. So takes time. Repetition's the mother of skill. So a couple weeks ago, I'm going down I-5, and this guy cuts in front of me. My instant reaction was, I hope he doesn't get a ticket. I was like, whoa, is that me? You know, this guy, I'm all angry and, you know, want to chase up. I hope this guy doesn't get a ticket. Wow, this stuff is really working. Here's the cool part about this stuff, is you work on impatience or whatever, disappointment or whatever, in one area. Because we're so wired together, it'll show up in different areas. So my impatience, dealing with Walmart checkers. All of a sudden I have compassion for them. Dealing with TSA in the airport. I thought these guys are going to be crude, rude, probe me or whatever, and they're gracious and they have a sense of humor. And what's going on? But so there's that ripple effect with anything that you come up with. Self-doubt was another one I started working on. You find that puppy popping up everywhere. And it's habitual because it's been wired in from our genetics to the womb. The 0 to 2 is huge. It's pre-verbal. It's all emotional interaction with life and mom and folks and stuff. And we learn on an emotional basis how to interact with life, largely womb to 2. Because your mom's emotions in the womb affect you as a little baby. So if your mom's angry, guess what? Directly influenced, yeah. Way more than playing Mozart, okay? Yeah. And then about 35 years old, 95% of what you do is automatic, and 95% of that has been visited upon you by somebody else. So it's like you really haven't had a lot of choices, unless you get educated early on about this stuff. And this stuff is fairly recent. Only in the last 10 years is this stuff really coming out. But all that stuff produces thoughts, emotions, attitudes, and belief systems, which produce opinions and stories that support about the way things are. Okay? And then that's what we act off of as evidence of the way things are supposed to be. Now, what happens is that these are human beings. I didn't put noses on them or anything, but these are 5 human beings in a room. Well, guess what? Every single person is bringing a unique set of this stuff into the room. About what's supposed to be, what should or shouldn't be, what's right or wrong, true or false, what's the problem, I can fix it. Those kinds of things. We're all bringing in the room, and they're all different. Okay? So what happens is they collide. You know, when it comes to communication, one of the things that's happened, I don't know if you guys know the 93% of what you communicate is what you look like, and your emotions, and your voice tones, and word pace. Stuff like 7% is content. So you're emanating a message without saying a word. And so in all that behavior, what you're engaging in, all comes from this background. And that behavior is different for every person about what should or shouldn't be, what's appropriate behavior, inappropriate, etc. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? So when you get people in a meeting, one of the things that happens is these collide. So if you can imagine carrying around some vibrations with you around negative or positive thoughts, attitude, demeanor, all those kinds of things, and you come into a room, what do you bring in? You sit down at a table at a meeting, and here's one of the greatest phrases I ever heard from Ken Cloak. But nothing is as powerful, nothing you say is as powerful as what you think and don't say. So if you've got these 5 people sitting around the table, or 12 or whatever, the bigger the group, the worse the issues. They're sitting around the table and they're thinking, she's an idiot. That's not right. That's a stupid idea. All those kinds of things. You got resentment and disappointment and irritation going on. And how many people have been irritated in meetings? Yeah. So what you have in the room, that's called emotional contagion, the most proven thing in brain science. And you guys know it by people getting the giggles. That's emotional contagion. Somebody walks in the room in a bad mood and people go, whoa. Yeah, you can feel it. There are mirror neurons in your brain. They're reflecting what everybody else's mirror neurons are. Somebody walks in the room in a good mood, they go, hey. You know, that's emotional contagion as well. So what are you producing in the room as far as emotional contagion? And again, what you're thinking and not saying is really, really powerful because it's infecting, if you will, everybody else in the room. So hence, well, that's why we have these agreed upon standards around how we're going to act with each other, how we're going to manage our conflict, and how we're going to manage our meetings. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's kind of the foundational stuff of everything I'm bringing here. Let me see, let's get through this. So there's some things you can do around trust building behaviors. I threw that in. Here's a conflict management system, emphasizing prevention first. One of the reasons you want to manage conflict is there's a spiral from simple conflict, sources of conflict are simple differences. The way I organize my desk versus the way you organize your desk can be a source of conflict. You guys take Myers-Briggs? Anybody? Yeah, so the P and the J's. The J's are orderly and complete, so their desks are clean, they have file folders, everything alphabetized. P's have everything out here. File management versus pile management, okay? Now that's just simply a difference. However, in our society, we tend to label these people as slobs. Or we can label these people as uptight and anal retentive if we don't know that they're just simple differences, yeah? Okay, that can spiral into misunderstandings easily enough, then disagreements, then discord, the opposite of harmony, and then polarization, us versus them. So you got sales versus accounting versus manufacturing, engineering versus manufacturing, marketing versus sales, just all kinds of stuff. Those are called silos, so people battle. So we want to stop this at the simple difference and misunderstanding stage with simply communication and education. We know the difference between an I and E and a J and a P. We know how to communicate to eliminate understandings, to get clarity and seek specificity. Seek to understand first, then to be understood. Those are communication techniques we use to keep it at that top two levels so it doesn't spiral down into. And then time kicks in. Then the us and them have been around for 10 years, and boy, it's going to be hard to root that puppy out of the organization, you know? Yeah. So, but here's another one. The cost of conflict, and you can take this to the cost of meetings as well. Let's say I got a study, and if you guys want any of these documents or anything that I'm talking about, email me and I'll send them to you. A study called Fight, Flight, or Face It, 7, 8 different countries in the world. They measured, did research on the impact of conflict in the organization. Around time lost, turnover takes about 1.5 times the salary of the present employee to train it to get, recruit and retain a new one. So there's a cost right there. Opportunity cost, absenteeism, there's a whole bunch of stuff. So Brazil and Belgium, England and the United States, France and Ireland, and I think that's it. Anyway, there's a couple more. But anyway, so they said in the United States that 2.7 hours a week was wasted in conflict per person on average in the United States. Okay. Now, if you can think of time wasted in meetings, how many, if you're wasting 50% of time in this nation on average, 50% of time in meetings is wasted time. So if you're spending 4 hours in meetings a week, 2 hours of that is wasted, basically. But I like to use the conflict one because meetings can be a source of conflict, right? People walk out being all ticked off, you know, because they're wasting their time. Now I've just lost 3 hours worth of work time, etc. So resentment now we've got going on. Okay, so let's do. We'll take. I'll take their data, and I'll say that 2 hours is wasted each week instead of 2.7, just to be conservative. And we're going to pay them $20 an hour, just to keep the math even, which is $40 per week. Okay, but wait, we need to have takes 2 to conflict, so we got another person at $40. And let's say we throw in a supervisor at 1 hour to straighten it out, that equals $100 a week. But wait, let's say we're working 50 weeks a year. So that's what, $1,000? No, $5,000. Yeah. Correct me on my math if I'm wrong here, guys. So that's $5,000 a year we've lost. Okay. We have more than 2 people in the company. We have, I don't know, what, 50 people? Or let's say 40 people in the company. That's 20 pairs. So we want to multiply that times 20, which is 100,000. Okay. That's a bit of a chunk of change. But how do we make up for that $100,000 loss? If we're making 10% profit, again, just to keep the math simple, $100,000 equals 10% of what? Just off your algebra skills. $1 million. You got to go out and generate $1 million in order to make $100,000 to compensate for this not getting managed at this level here. That make sense? Yeah. They're turning this into meeting hours. 2 hours a week, right? Lost times 50 people, or yeah, say 50 people. So $40 times 50. That's 50 times 40 is what? $2,000, right? Okay. So $2,000, and then times 50 weeks. So $2,000 times 50 ends up being $100,000 we lost in lost time in meetings. Is that a reason to really probably get a handle on how do you run your meetings? You think? Yeah. So people don't think about that, right? You just think about, I don't like to go to the meeting. I go to the meeting. Meeting? Oh my God, no! They're going to waste my time. They get bored. All that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? And again, if you're working at 10% profit, how much money do you got to make? Put it on the agenda. How much money do we got to generate this year to take up for lost time in meetings? Another $1 million. Yeah. So that should go on the agenda as part of the strategic planning. Let's plan in how we're going to generate $1 million to compensate for lost time in meetings. In the meeting. Probably won't ever get it done, right? Anyway, you get where I'm going though, right? I'm making a hard case for soft skills here. Because what we're going to ask people to do is start practicing respect, building trust, those kinds of things, what we're asking people to do. And even in the meetings, we want to do that. Now, so that's a rationale for conflict, hostile conflict. Now, I've given you, I don't want to spend too much on this because we want to get the meeting stuff here, but I gave you a sample sheet of interpersonal performance standards. And what we do is give people a worksheet with some prompts, and you make their own. So this one here was the executive team for the Business Management Club. This was their agreement about how they would work together. So they're going to offer help, ask for help. They're going to demonstrate respect by empathic listening, maintain composure in a challenging situation, those kinds of things. Those are things we all agree on, and then can sign and date it. And once you've got this established, this is now an interview tool. So a new person coming to work, this is what we've agreed on about how we're going to interact with each other. You want to read this and see if you can live with that? Of course they say yes, yeah, sign at the bottom. But 2 months later, when they snap at somebody, we now have a reference point. Remember when you said you would maintain composure in a challenging situation. Now we have an opportunity for coaching. Okay? So this isn't telling them what to do, we're asking for some intrinsic motivation to come up with the performance we require. So whether that performance is interacting with other people, or it's showing up on time for work, or it's actually a performance issue, how many mushrooms can you chop? How many flats of mushrooms can you chop in 10 minutes, kind of thing. It's all performance. We're just asking for interpersonal performance. So the other thing I threw in was a coach training model. This is kind of information about the principles of coaching. We did a coaching session with a local retailer, and they were holding 4-hour meetings. I know, but they were taking 6 hours to get them done. It just hurts when it wins, right? They took this model, they took our meeting model back, and they went back, and very first meeting they had was all the managers. They got done in 4 hours. Like bam. They were like, wow, this works. So that, and then we did the coach training model with them. And when I sat down and did a role play with one of the managers, she was having a problem with one of her assistant managers, and within 5 minutes we uncovered the fact that her assistant manager didn't have any supervisory skills training whatsoever. So was he having a problem with the employees he was supervising? Absolutely, if he has no skills, right? He's just going off what his mom and dad and former bosses taught him, which is probably dysfunctional, more than likely. So, any questions about all that? I kind of did a quick gloss over of what we're trying to do with this stuff here. Any questions or comments or curiosities, or do you have one?
Oh, yeah. So you're gonna get to the point where you tell us how to do all this? Because my brain is like rolling now.
Yeah, you're overwhelmed, huh?
Yeah?
Yeah, it's a lot of information. Well, all of these are broken down, that sign-up sheet that I'm passing around, all this stuff is broken down into those workshops. So we can focus on facilitation skills in one workshop. We can focus on conflict management, communication in one workshop. So, because this is like 8 hours of training at least. So we break them down to 2- and 3-hour workshops. And again, one of the things we're doing is getting the Business Management Club students engaged in doing this kind of stuff. So they get experience getting in front of people, so they get some visibility and credibility. You know? So, and I'm there as a backup to make sure that everything stays on track and they get some, if they falter, I'm there to catch them and everything. So what we're focusing on today is this meeting management model. And I try to get stuff on one sheet of paper instead of reading pages of blocky paragraphs, and get it so that it ends up being like a worksheet or a reference tool. So this actually got spawned, this meeting model got spawned. I was an AmeriCorps supervisor for 4 years. You guys familiar with AmeriCorps? No, it's like the Peace Corps in America. People from 17 years old on up can engage in, for 11 months, they get paid $1,000 a month, and they get food stamps, eligible for subsidized housing, and basic health benefits. And at the end of 11 months, they get $5,000 in education money. So it's a really cool program. 98% of the people that go into it are motivated to grow themselves, help other people, those kinds of things. They work in struggling schools with struggling students. They do community service projects. They work with the homeless. They work in the environment, stuff like that. The meeting model I was introduced to was developed by a Harvard graduate who worked with us, and that's where I got the basis from. And then I did a whole bunch of research on how meetings were run, and I couldn't find anything. I found articles with like books, right, with ideas, but nothing with any kind of like framework. So it was like, I'm just going to make my own. So I did. So at the very bottom, one of the things that that visits people and they don't even know it and causes a lot of unnecessary conflict is role ambiguity. I'm not quite sure what my role is compared to your role. Where are the authority lines? Some of those are blurred. All that kind of stuff. Anybody ever been put in charge of a group of people? Go from peer to supervisor, and it wasn't really articulated? Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Then you're shocked when people, what are you telling me what to do? Kind of stuff, yeah. Yeah. So role ambiguity is huge. And I uncovered that 4 or 5 years ago. It was like, this is a living entity. Versus role clarity. I'm really clear about what my role is and what your role is and how we interact and all those kinds of things. That gets rid of some of this stuff here, yeah? This collision stuff. Now I'm really clear where my boundaries, here we've got some boundaries overlapping here, yeah? That's the role ambiguity stuff. And it's insidious because it's not visible. It's like, hey, guess what? I have role ambiguity. It's not there, right? It's invisible. And that's one of the things, you guys, that's really, one of the things that's really driving stuff is, up here you can see what speech and behaviors are. Okay, that's visible. Down here are thoughts, emotions, and belief systems, which I shortened to BS. Yeah, so all this stuff is, all these thoughts, belief systems, emotions are driving the speech and behavior. So, and if you believe the couple of studies of 60,000 people apiece that said that 93% of what you communicate is what you look like and how you move and what your voice sounds like, 7% is content. That look like email? You've got no voice tone, you've got no visibility, all you got is content. You have a 93% chance of miscommunicating through email. So you better stay away from the subjective stuff. Data, times, dates, information, yeah. My opinions, what she did you hear about? That's the, yeah. So, we've got, this is driving this, we want to get after this stuff here, yeah. So that's why commitment, agreements about how we're going to work together, how we're going to manage, and commitment is all addressing this stuff here. Now we can change the belief system, now we can change the behaviors in speech, yeah. And this is where business corporations fail, is they try to do the to-do stuff. What are the techniques? What do we do? How do we do that? What are the models? All that stuff. It's not addressing this here. It's what change efforts fail, like 95% of the time. Because you're not addressing the hearts and minds. A couple of buddies of mine do lean strategy. Have you guys heard of that? Kaizen. It's the methodology Toyota used to become the #1 automaker in the world. Yeah.
We call it Kaizen.
Yeah, Kaizen. Yeah. Yeah, and they're saying that 80 to 90% of the time those Kaizen efforts fail because they're trying to do this technique stuff. But you do the 5 S's and do this, put that there, and mark off blah, blah, blah. But they're not addressing the hearts and minds of the people who are doing the work. That make sense? Yeah. So we want to go after that. We want to go after this arena here, which is this arena here. Okay? Now, one of the things we do when we get these agreements about how we're going to act together, how we're going to manage conflict, how we're going to run our meetings, and we're going to concentrate on communication and getting clear and concise communication, and if a violation occurs, we have coaching to help support the human being to get back up into performance mode. Okay? Yeah. One of the things that's happening is that when we create these boundaries, this is how we act and don't act. This is how we act and don't act. We avoid kidding, teasing, in case hidden agendas are there. If there's low trust, anybody been in a low trust environment and people are kidding and teasing? Yeah, not fun, yeah? We negate any negative gossip, sarcasm, fault finding. We say all those things are out of bounds. We promote reaching out, getting the other person's perspective, expressing emotions, creating solutions. We stay away from winning at all costs, displays of anger, retaliation, and demeaning behaviors. So we're really setting boundaries about how we talk and act and get commitment from people around all this stuff so that we can address thoughts, belief systems, and emotions, and all that kind of stuff that's generating speech and behavior. Now, what that does is that creates a boundary within which are all the effective behaviors. I try to stay away from good and bad, right or wrong, that kind of stuff. What's working? What's not working? What might we do? So we want to put what's working in here and keep what's not working out of here, okay, in the workplace. That make sense? Okay? So one of the things we do is create our meetings so that we're walking out feeling fulfilled, completed, having fun, positive, those kinds of things. Because one of the other things we do is we create a work environment. Okay? Actually, let me do this. I'm making another hard case for soft skills. So every organization has some kind of bottom line results, right? And how do we get those bottom line results? Oops. High performance teams are going to give us focused production, more streamlined, more precise, maximum impact, minimum effort, maximum benefit, minimum cost. We're not going to get those out of low performance teams, right? Makes sense. Okay, so but how do we get that? How do we get what fosters these high performance teams as far as the work environment? You think positive work environment or negative work environment?
Positive.
Positive work environment, right? No brainer. How do we get that? Any idea?
No, that's the problem.
By establishing norms.
By establishing norms, because these are now our norms, right? So what we want to do is deliberately go establish this instead of hoping accidentally that it's going to emerge out of a bunch of different folks that are all bringing in a truckload of different baggage. So we're asking them to establish these norms, these as norms, so when we go through forming and then through storming, we know where we're going as far as our norms. Then we can get to performing. If we're all cluttered and discombobulated over here, we're not going to get high performance. Yeah? There's going to be, how about this one? Night shift, day shift. The us and them? Yeah, absolutely, right? Well, we say in here, we don't want that. We're deliberately saying we don't want that. Instead of just letting it live because we don't know how to deal with it. No, because now we got coaching. We can talk to people about this stuff and say, hey, that's not contributing to this stuff here or to our positive work environment to promote high performance teams. That make sense? Yeah. Okay. So, having said all that, we got the little meeting model. So, I kind of digressed off the roles down there. So we have, the members have a role, very clear to support the process. So they help support staying away from off-task behaviors, like sidebar conversations, or dominating the discussion, war stories, or regression, going back. One of the problems with that Moses Lake group, they'd get a new member in, they'd rehash the old stuff all over. They'd spend $60,000 on landscape design, and they're rehashing it over and over and over again. So it was a time to stop, design, and begin implementation. And that's the premise I worked with them on. But, so we got roles. We got a timer's role, because your agenda has timed agenda items. 10 minutes for this, 5 minutes for that, 30 minutes for that. And what the timer does is raise their hand at a certain, say they're 75% through, and you got 5 minutes left. So the timer doesn't say you're done, right? You got 5 minutes left, and then the group decides do we want to keep on going, go over, they're going to stop and keep the meeting on task. Yeah. So the recorder, this person takes care of what used to be called the minutes. So Robert's Rules of Order was good for a different time. In today's world, with increasing multicultural differences, increasing technology complexity, Robert's Rules of Order doesn't work anymore. Nobody can remember what they are, first of all, right? So we're trying to keep this simple. So the recorder takes down what was discussed, purchase of a new coffee maker, what was decided to let Jenny go buy one, what was the action item, and that's Jenny is the owner, and her deadline date is to get a coffee maker by Friday the 19th. Okay, so we got an owner, a task, and a deadline date, and that's all the recorder records. But the other thing they do is they have a role in the meeting to go, is out of the swirl of conversation go, that sounds like an action item. Is it? And you'll see people stop in their tracks and go, because they get so caught up in the conversation, right? So, well, yeah, yes it is. And who wants to take ownership? What's the deadline date? Write it down. Okay? That gets reviewed at the end of the meeting, and necessarily so, because stuff, communication is hard, and stuff, little details get dropped, and I thought it was Thursday, not Friday, and those kinds of things. Okay? And then the facilitator is, those don't require a lot of skill sets, recorder, timer, and member. The facilitator requires a skill set, and their skill sets are listed over here on your right-hand side of the paper. Yeah. Yeah. No. Left hand. Yeah, right-hand side of the paper, yeah. I think I'm dyslexic. Anyway, so yeah, so this is a huge, and I love group facilitation because if done properly, it can transform a group from night to day. And I'll give you an example, is I worked with 14 food bank directors from around the valley, Concrete to down here to everywhere. And I have a little process, one of the things that says, what's standing in your way to realize your vision? Because I haven't articulated what a vision might be, and then what's standing in your way. And one of the things I put on there was, we don't work well together. So I got into the brainstorm and action item phase of the facilitation design, and that was the last thing left on their obstacles. And I said, what do you guys want to do about this? They said, erase it, we're good. And that's transformation. Yeah, it chills. Yeah, but it is, it's getting people, now think about it, especially food banker. Do they have a common passion? Absolutely, right? Do they have a common vision? Absolutely. But what happens is they get disarrayed, all these differences start showing up, yeah, and then they clash. So one of the facilitation designs I do is called a same page meeting, and it gets them back on the same page. So I list what their passions are. Commonality. What do you want to look like? Commonality. What are the obstacles? Commonality again, because they all know what the obstacles are, yeah? And then brainstorm. And then get some action items around task, ownership, and deadline dates. Yeah, that's an example of a facilitation design. The skills of the facilitator to remain neutral to the content. So not be jumping in with good ideas about how to organize, or what days or times, or what kind of structure you guys need, or any of that. Stay out of the content. The facilitator really just guides the process. This now becomes, as a facilitator, the group and their information. Or if it's not even on a flip charts are handy to get the information visible, because in a meeting the information is in the atmosphere, and everybody has a different interpretation of it. By the way, all this background here creates a lens through which you look for the rest of your life unless you change it. So everything, every piece of information you receive is filtered through that lens. And then you come up with what's right and wrong, what should or shouldn't be, what's supposed to, and we get all that information out of the past. What we've seen, what we've experienced, we know that works, we know that happens if we do this, then that, kind of stuff, yeah. So in a group of people, we got 6 different filters this one idea is going through. The potential for unnecessary disagreement is huge. So using a flip chart or a whiteboard is a handy tool to get the information out of the air and up on the wall. And now this is the group and their information. I'm standing on the side just guiding the process. Making sure people don't go over time. I've got my timer. Making sure people that action items get captured. I got my recorder. Making sure sidebars and whatever off-task behaviors we agreed upon are taken care of and honored. Okay, so one of the things, so neutrality, process design, what a facilitator does, listening skills, questioning skills, flexibility, honoring the wisdom of the group, maintain the group energy. You know, this is the facilitation. Recorder, timer, and member don't require a lot of training. Yeah, a facilitator has the highest level of skill sets in this instance, or in this framework here. Okay. Now, one of the things we do on the next page is a worksheet, but if you look on the left-hand side, here's some potential distractions to address. You could call them off-task behaviors. You could, so if you're not clear about your mission and vision, if you're not clear about your roles, all those are things that can distract from the meeting. Yeah. Sidebar conversations are huge, because two people sidebarring back there distract these two people and probably those two people and the facilitator. The other side of it is they may have something very valuable to contribute, but they're keeping it trapped back there. So that's something, but the group works on what are the off-task behaviors that we want to address with ground rules or guidelines or guardrails or whatever you want to call them. So I use the analogy of got a wagon full of rocks. This is a meeting. You got a wagon full of rocks, you want to get it to the top of the hill. Now, on each side of the road up to the top of the hill are steep drop-offs. So what we do is we put guardrails on there. We call them ground rules, guidelines, whatever you want. But it's to keep the group from going over the edge and keep them moving the same way. So everybody's pulling and pushing in the same direction toward our meeting today's outcome. Not some more stories over here, not some what we should have done, could have done, that kind of stuff in the past, but towards that top of the hill thing. Yeah. So this whole framework is designed to make that happen. That make sense? Yeah. Because we'll go off. We're human beings. We love to tell stories. And I got one that'll impress you to death. Yeah. Absolutely. Actually, I got a few of them. Right? And I'm going to take up meeting time to do it. Yeah. So, does this make sense? So you got, whatever these are, agenda departures, off-task good ideas, room climate, the room too hot, too cold, that can make a difference, yeah? So as far as the group of human beings that are in the room, how are they feeling comfortable and free and clear in their mind? Yeah. So, I'm going to throw another little tidbit here. So we talk about emotional contagion in the room. And one of the things that happens is, our brains are scanning for threat 5 times a second, 24 hours a day. We're wired to make sure that's not a saber-toothed tiger in the bush, that it is just a blueberry, and our brain, our reptilian brain doesn't know, bluebird, sorry, our reptilian brain doesn't know the difference between a thought about what my boss said yesterday and the saber-toothed tiger. So our reptilian brain is going off as though that remark you made was a saber-toothed tiger. That make sense? Yeah. That's one of the other most proven. So what that does is kicks your adrenal glands into gear, shooting off cortisol because you're stressing out. So a thought about your mother-in-law and going to dinner, right? Boom! Spike, 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 yeah? And over the long term, there's where they're saying now that 75% of people that are going into medical institutions are going because of causes of stress. Being overwhelmed, as innocent as that may sound, is a huge cause of stress. They're finding this is going to be a leading cause of killers today, is being overwhelmed. And we've never, as human beings, we've never worked like this before, right? You need to go over. Former student. So, does that make sense? We've taken care of that. Now, the agenda item has timed objectives in it. And I've got some sample agenda items like the minutes read, opening check-in, There's another good tip I read, small little tip. I pull little tips out of stuff. I'll read a book, I'll get one tip, I'll go use it. Yeah. One is when you open up the meeting, open it up with something positive. 30 seconds, tell us something positive that happened this week. Let's go around the table. You're setting emotional contagion, emotional environment, positive environment. You're establishing that up front, deliberately. So even if you're delivering bad news, you're delivering it from a positive framework versus whatever accidental framework we're going to get. Yeah. So read the last action item, what we discussed, what was decided, what action items were, who was owner, and what was the deadline date on it. Just review that.
So in the actual meeting, you would query, the group and say, give me something positive that happened, or? Okay.
Yeah. Go around the table. We'll start with you. Tell us something positive that happened in the last week. It could be personal, professional. We're just trying to inject positivity into the environment.
Right.
Yeah. As a get-go, as one little piece of the recipe to help us keep moving forward. And then just keep that positivity going. Do the last action items, update what's done, what didn't get done, what needs to get resolved or dropped. You keep your action items on your agenda all the time until they're resolved. Maybe they disappear, maybe it's not necessary anymore. Something else happened, we got a new piece of equipment, so we didn't even do that. We don't even need to do that. Yeah. But until they get resolved, that way they never get dropped. There's a real big source of drop balls. Because those action items get handed off to somebody, they never land back here. Yeah. So then we have new discussions about stuff, and then we make decisions and we get new action items. And here's a real cool thing. So if somebody comes up with a good idea that's off task, it's off the agenda, we have a parking lot at the end of the meeting. Okay, that sounds like a really good idea. Can we put that in the parking lot? Or, here's the flexibility and honoring the wisdom of the group. Is this something you feel like you want to go with? You don't say, no, put it in the parking lot. Or say, yeah, absolutely, this is awesome, what a great idea, let's dig into this. So you got to honor the wisdom of the group. Okay, you're not really controlling them, you're guiding the process, and that flexibility is huge. So, and the group will know. The group will let you know that we want to stick to the agenda, or yes, we want to expand into this quote good idea. And if it's no, we put it in the parking lot. That way, we've honored the person's input, said we'll pay attention to it later, and not have to shut them down. And I said, permission statement, can we put that in the parking lot? Instead of saying, let's put that in the parking lot. Get the difference? Yeah. The facilitator is really respecting the group by asking permission. And good practice, anything you put into a statement, try to put it into a question. Great little exercise. Yeah. So, and then after we've gone through the parking lot, we want to review the decisions and action items. That stuff will go on the next agenda as old action items. And then we have a closing evaluation about how the process went today. How did our meeting get run today? How well was it run? And go around the table. So we start with something positive, and we end with how to improve. And in the meantime, in the middle, we pay attention to business. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I got to tell you, every time we've used this with people, it's like they walk out going, man, that was cool. We went bang, bang, bang. We didn't go off the department chair meeting at the college. Nobody wants to go to those, including the department chairs. Because they don't have a framework. They don't have a framework. And I've approached them and said, hey guys, let me help you out here. I got a framework that really works. But they're stuck in the status quo, right? It's harder to change. We've got to change those thoughts, behaviors, and belief system stuff. Yeah. Okay. Any questions so far?
How often did you say the brain scans for threats?
5 times a second. They actually took 2 groups of people, and they had a maze, and a mouse in a maze, and a hunk of cheese, and a mouse hole. And they had people they answered some questions when they had the symbol just up there, no story, just answered, or no, how to get out of the maze and get the mouse into the cheese in the mouse hole. The other picture was no cheese, mouse hole, maze, mouse, and a rough, crude sketch of an owl. The people that tried to figure out the maze with the owl in it, when they measured did brain scans on them afterwards, their cognitive skills and their unconscious intelligences, which is where you get the aha moments from, both of which were reduced by 50% compared to the other group. There were 50% less capability in those brain areas than the other group. Simply a crude picture of an owl. Now that's how sensitive we are to threat. Isn't that crazy? So you can imagine in a meeting when somebody frowns at me, where am I going? I'm going fight or flight. Yeah. And it depends on my position and level of authority, and I'm going to go there definitely. Yeah. So what we have here, here we have a worksheet for people to come up with how we're going to interact with each other and agree on it. This is already built. I generally ask people to adopt this conflict management system. It's pretty sturdy. Been working on it for 15 years. Not that it can't be tweaked, but just for now, adopt it, and then later on take a closer look, and maybe you want to tweak it, take some stuff out, add some stuff in, up to you, the group. The beautiful thing is the group is designing the agreement. So the facilitator and or the supervisor as facilitator isn't engaging in the content, letting the group come up with their own decisions. Now they've got ownership. You said you would. So I don't have to tell you anything as a supervisor. I just got to draw you back to your original individual agreement. Yeah. So the same thing with the meeting. We have a little meeting worksheet that said, have them work from this framework, so they have some structure, but then they come up and answer these questions. Can we adopt these roles as legitimate and doable for our group? What's the other one? Is the role of facilitator clear? Does the structure of the agenda look like it's going to work for you? Make a list of off-task behaviors that you want to address, because every group's different, right? Some people may not have a dominating discussion guy, right? Dominating the environment, dominating the conversation. Other people may have 2 or 3 of them. Yeah. Does that make sense? So again, what we're doing is getting the group to work together, action, to come up with an agreement about how they're going to run their meetings. Now all the facilitator does is just have people come back to what they agreed to. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So then the supervisor, because I was a hot dog line cook. Now you're in charge of 15 people. It's like, how do I do that? I can saute fettuccine, okay? People? Oh my God. And I wondered for years, was I doing a good job? In fact, I went back to school when I was 41. And one of the things that I pursued, what is effective leadership? I still didn't know whether I was a good leader or supervisor or not. And it turns out I was. I studied the Jesus out of it, 5 different books, did a presentation, workshops, all that kind of stuff. And figured out that I was probably about 85% good supervisor. There were some holes in there around performance standards and stuff like that. But you don't know unless you have some kind of something to look at to compare. So let's see what we've got left here. Is that it? That's the last? Yes, it is. So we've kind of, I'm trying to cram 8 hours of stuff into here. And again, so communication and conflict I lumped together. This is a workshop doing the interpersonal performance standards. Coaching is a workshop. The meeting management around facilitation skills is a workshop. So we actually do some role playing and have some meetings and have people act out a little bit. What does the facilitator do? Those kinds of things. So tell me what you got out of today. What struck you as something you might be interested in further, or something you can go use right away, or any of that stuff?
Well, some of it you can obviously use right away without totally bungling it, and the rest we need more in-depth tooling. So, but I found it very, very interesting.
Yeah, like the communication tips, you can go do that right now. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Ooh, one of the one of the great things, a couple of years ago, no, just about a year ago, I learned this from Words Can Change Your Brain, is a book. They talked about if you want to communicate effectively, be relaxed and speak in chunks and use little pauses. Because people can get in a stream of conversation, people can get stuck back here, all of a sudden the rest of that conversation gets lost. So if you can speak in chunks, the brain is more readily able to quickly absorb it. Yeah, it was just a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I realized my classroom is a lab. Because I'm asking these people to take emotional intelligence assessments and take the strategies suggested in the assessment, go out and use them in the real world, and then report back what happened. Overwhelmingly changed my life, changed my relationship with my dad, brother, sister, husband, daughter, stuff. You ready for this one? Got my kids to do their chores without arguing. I get at least one of those a quarter. Yeah.
That's the last word.
Divorce, death, get the kids to not argue. Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else that you see popping out here?
Well, one thought that kept recurring to me is, okay, I love all this, it makes great sense to me, but how do you get leadership to buy into this? I'll take it back to work, and then I'll have people roll their eyes at me, and yeah, and then I may never get there. So how do I?
So here's so through the American Society of Quality 10 years ago, I took their Certified Quality Manager's exam, 4-hour exam. This thick of body of knowledge stuff. And one of the pieces was senior management comes and says, go implement this quality program. And you ask them, are you willing to be getting educated about it? And if they say no, your answer is no. Okay. Fast forward a few years, a friend of mine used to have a crucial conversations distributorship, one of 19 in the nation. He works in big organizations, Caterpillar, Polaroid, big boys, paychecks, those kind of things. What he had come to, because he battled with that forever, right? So he decided to disregard them and said, who's in your circle of influence? Can you implement this stuff? Now, I just went to Angel of the Winds Casino in October, did 24 hours of workshops for 4 weeks in a row. And they started saying, lazy employees, senior manager doesn't support us, and I said, what if you could, have you guys heard of the circle of influence, circle of concern? No? So if you take, where can I do this at? I'll waste some paper. So if you have some influence, this comes out of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and then you have a circle of concern. In here is what you can directly decide to go do and act on and make happen. Okay. Out here is other people's decisions, choices, and actions. Like Washington, D.C., for instance. Are they a circle of concern? Do we have much influence? Not really. I mean, voting gets us, yeah. Say, okay, but so your bosses, so your bosses, right? Are they in your circle of concern? So at Angel of the Winds, I asked them 3 times to come down and just say hi in the workshops, and they refused to. But when I got the supervisors, this was 70 supervisors is who this was. And you can imagine 500 employees, 3 shifts, 24/7s, do they have issues? Money, gambling regulations, all kinds of external factors. So I said, if your bosses, your senior management is in their circle of concern, what is it you can influence? So for instance, can you go implement some of this stuff? Are they going to bother you about it? And they said no. They don't bother us at all, good or bad, right? Unless it's something bad that they got to pay attention to it. They walked out of there with a whole total different attitude of like, we're going to go try this stuff. I got a commitment from every one of them. can you guys implement this stuff? And they're like, thumbs up, absolutely, you bet, not a problem, come back, help us reinforce this stuff. Because what you pointed to is classic, right? We go to a workshop, we get all excited, great stuff, we go back to work, we throw the binder on the file cabinet, and it's back to the same old grind. So that's talking about culture. So if we talk about these forming, storming, norming, the norms, that's your culture, yeah? Culture eats change for breakfast. Peter Drucker, 1954, okay? So make a change, go ahead, yeah? But if you can influence the 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 folks around you and say, let's implement this stuff, let's come up with an agreement about how to manage conflict amongst ourselves and get them to buy in, which buying in means they do the work and the worksheets and stuff, yeah? And you can make that happen. There's actually a book out called Real Change Leaders. And it's been out 10 or 12 or 15 years. But it's about managers who came into organizations and in their department, they made changes and turned out high-performance teams. And kept senior management out of the way. Yeah. And it's a great story because there's like 12 case studies in there about people who did it. And oftentimes they did it intuitively. They didn't come in with a program. They just did it intuitively about empowering their employees, making stuff happen, engaging employees. Employee engagement is a huge buzzword nowadays. Gallup has done surveys on employee engagement for the last 20 years. It has not changed. 30% of workers enjoy going to work and are engaged. The other 70% are either disengaged or actively disengaged, which is sabotage, yeah, on however subtle of a basis. So, me and my friend Mike Cook came up with this stuff, but he was like, just ask the employees to get engaged. What you're doing, so focus on who you have influence over. My 5 or 10 folks that work for me, start somewhere. Like my lean strategy, but just run it rough, but run it. Then you can always improve it. Yeah. The Toyota, I lived on Guam when I was a kid, and there was Toyotas and Datsuns, and you felt like you could take the bed of the pickup and just go like this and rip it. That's how cheap they were. But they just kept it continuously improving, and 40 years later, #1 automaker in the world. Yeah. So run it rough, but run it. So anything else? So are you guys interested? What I'm doing with the workshop sheet that I passed around is what I'm doing is getting engagements with folks, taking students out, getting them in front of people and having them do chunks of the presentation like the opening or introductions and closing and that kind of stuff. And then slowly add things to their list of things they can take the conflict piece or the communication piece, for instance, and run that. And then what I do is that instead of charging people, we ask for donations for the club. So whatever people want to give, 50 cents or 50 bucks or whatever. But the most important part is that the students are getting some experience, getting in front of folks and delivering valuable content. So anyway, we'll keep you posted on, you guys are chamber members?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll keep you posted on, we'll do presentations for Mount Vernon Chamber. Most importantly, we want to do the workshops because there's where the value is. They can tell you about stuff all day long, right? But get in and do some role plays and run little fake meetings and stuff like that.
What was your email address?
Do Max, M-A-X, .Collette, COLLETTE, at Skagit.edu. So I didn't bring a bibliography. I got about 10 books that are just awesome that I pulled from. Your Brain at Work is a great one. David Rock was a business coach and ended up, that's in the library now. But he ended up running global neuro leadership summits. And anyway, Your Brain at Work sets up this husband and wife and 2 adolescent kids, and he's a consultant, she works in an organization, and tells stories, a little scene, puts it in a theater frame, tells act one and what happens, and wife's going to work and she gets overwhelmed and she screws things up, and then he has her go through scene two where she's going to work and she's overwhelmed, but now she manages her resources. She has a tape recorder in her car so she can get stuff down. She goes to work, she doesn't get interrupted, all those kinds, managing your prefrontal cortex, your brain's resources, because they're limited. Do you know willpower's limited? It is. They've dozens of studies. Give you a piece of chocolate cake and say, don't eat it. Great, you did well, you didn't eat it, we push it away. Bring you another piece of, your willpower goes down like this. It's like a tank of gas and you're running out. So be careful where you use it. Yeah. Yeah. Prioritizing is a resource drainer. So you want to get it out of the way first. If you're low on resources, it gets hard to prioritize. You ever experienced that? Yeah. So there's little tips like that in the book about how to use your brain at work so that you're managing your resources well. So anyway, I got a bunch of that stuff.
What was that author's name?
David Rock. He's got a bunch of stuff out. He was a business coach. Worked in China and New Zealand and Europe and stuff, and got interested in the brain science and started delving into it around coaching and what's happening with the brain while you're being coached. So he has a, tell me when to stop here because I'll keep going. He has a little model called the SCARF model, that every time we encounter something, we check for the impact on our status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, or being affected in any of those areas. So in coaching, asking questions is huge versus telling people, because if you tell people, you threaten their status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. If you ask them questions, it rewards their status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. So asking questions is huge around stuff, around dealing with employees, coaching, otherwise, yeah. Okay. All right, well, I mean, we covered a lot of ground, about an inch deep, but yeah, if you guys are interested, we'll keep you posted. Mount Vernon Chamber, Burlington Chamber, generally is who we work with. We're doing presentations on this stuff and then follow-up workshops. So on December 18th, Burlington Chamber, we're doing a 30-minute presentation on facilitation skills. What are facilitation, how to stay neutral, those kind of guide the process, those kinds of things. And then we're going to pass around a sign-up sheet to see who's interested in going to a 3-hour workshop later on, and what days and times might be good for folks. Because it's huge. Facilitation skills are not widely known, and they're huge around being able to guide groups to a destination that they want to get to without any wasted time. But they're not largely out there. We go to corporate, they're all over the place, facilitators, but and some people say they're facilitators, but they will jump into the content because they got good ideas, and that's just a no-no. So, alrighty. So, yeah, and then coaching, and then conflict management. Those are the 3 kind of major workshops we do. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you guys
much.
for being here.
Thank you.
What information, thank you.
Yeah, I like to over 1 minute. Then we'll sort it out later. Thank you.
Was there anybody in here that didn't pay?
Yep.
I didn't pay.
I didn't pay.